Okay, so you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, for this deep dive, we've got something really interesting.
Hmm.
Excerpts from this fictional podcast. They call it The Unqualified Opinion.
Okay.
And the premise is wild, right? It's like this modern day, podcast host. Her name is Hera Bite, and somehow she's talking to the resurrected philosopher Hegel.
Wow.
Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, like the 19th century
Oh, wow.
giant of philosophy,
Yeah.
dropped into our world.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like 2025, like, whoa.
What a concept. I mean, to hear a mind from that era, grappling with
Right.
everything we're dealing with, it's like
Yeah,
a time machine for thought,
totally. Like a philosophical mirror. Like, how would he look at our world?
Exactly.
Our tech, our society, everything. So, for you listening, that's our mission here today.
Okay.
We're going to unpack this conversation, see how Hegel reacts, what he thinks about today's tech and society, and pull out some hopefully useful insights, things that you can actually connect with, in your own life.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Okay, so the episode starts, and Hegel, he wakes up in this world of, like,
Yeah.
megabytes and
Yeah.
ads. I mean, talk about...
Sensory overload.
Yeah, can you imagine?
From the
yeah.
salons and philosophical debates of his time
Yeah.
to constant notifications and
The memes.
memes. Yeah,
It's mind-blowing.
wild. But here's the thing. He notices right away that his ideas about conflict and how opposites clash and create new understandings.
Wait, that's dialectic.
Exactly, the dialectic, it's still relevant even with all the, let's say, questionable information flying around these days.
Right, the fake news and all that.
Exactly. So right off the bat, we're seeing that the way we process ideas, like a fundamental human thing, it hasn't changed as much as we might think. Just the speed and delivery system,
Our packaging has changed.
The packaging, yeah.
And then he mentions TikTok. It's like almost comical, this serious philosopher.
Yeah.
And TikTok.
I know. It's like the writers of this fictional podcast, they're so clever.
Right.
They make Hegel relatable, he's not totally out of touch, but it also hints at something deeper, right?
Okay.
Like even something as seemingly trivial as TikTok, it can be analyzed philosophically. Like, what's the underlying spirit of it? What does it say about our collective consciousness, even if it's fleeting?
That's a good point. And then it gets even more interesting because Hegel starts talking about technology not just as our tools, but as something called Geist externalized. Now, for anyone listening who's like, wait, what?
Right.
How do we understand that, like, in a normal, everyday way?
Okay, so Geist, think of it as like the collective spirit or intelligence of humanity. It's like our drive to understand the world, our place in it, our urge to create and discover, right? So when Hegel says technology is Geist, externalized, he's saying our inventions, all of them, from the wheel to the smartphone, they're like physical expressions of this collective human intelligence. Like we're literally building our understanding out into the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like, it's not just a tool, it's an extension of ourselves, of our minds.
Right. So that leads to this idea that tech, it's not all good or all bad.
Absolutely not. It's full of contradictions. Like you mentioned earlier, connection versus isolation, freedom versus control, finding your voice, but also drowning in the noise.
Right. So it's like technology connects us, billions of people, right? Sharing knowledge, experiences.
It's incredible.
Amazing potential.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we see more and more division, people retreating into echo chambers.
Yes. And the promise of freedom, right? To access information, to express yourself. But then there's the whole issue of data privacy, algorithms controlling what you see. It's a double-edged sword.
And everyone has a voice now, which is great, but
cutting through the noise to actually be heard.
yeah, that's a whole other.
It's a challenge. And these aren't like glitches,
Right?
These are like fundamental tensions woven into our relationship with tech.
Baked into the system.
Exactly.
And Hegel, even in this fictional setting, he's like, okay, there's got to be some kind of resolution, a synthesis.
Right.
But he's not sure if it's going to be a good one.
Right.
It could liberate us or it could make us
Dependent.
Yeah, digitally dependent.
Hooked in a way that's not.
And then he asks this question about our fraying nerves.
Yeah.
He's like, is it the speed of everything or is it like a deeper emptiness that is so spot on, don't you think?
It really is. It makes you stop and think, like, are we stressed because we're doing too much or because what we're doing isn't truly fulfilling?
Right. Exactly. It's like, are we living our best lives or are we just kind of like on this hamster wheel?
And that potential resolution, that synthesis he talks about, It all depends on us, on whether we're just passively consuming every new gadget, every platform, or if we're actually stopping to think, critically about their impact
Yeah.
on our lives, our communities, our values. It's that conscious reflection that's key.
So let's talk about this idea of the acceleration of the world spirit. It sounds super epic, but what does it mean, like practically, for you and me, checking our phones, reading the news?
Well, it's fascinating because Hegel's concept of Weltgeist, which is like the unfolding of global self-awareness, it seems to be happening so much faster now.
Mm.
Like, think about how quickly things can change, like socially, politically.
Yeah, yeah.
Information spreads in an instant online.
Goes viral.
Viral, exactly. A hashtag can spark a movement across the world.
And suddenly everyone's talking about it.
It's like history itself is accelerating.
Yeah.
And our understanding of the world, it's changing with it.
But does that necessarily mean we're getting smarter, making better decisions just because things are faster?
That's the key question, isn't it? I mean, the speed of information can outpace our ability to actually process it critically.
Right.
We might be exposed to more perspectives than ever, but are we really engaging with them thoughtfully?
Or are we just skimming the surface?
Exactly. So faster doesn't automatically equal wiser. Sometimes it's the opposite.
And Hegel also brings up this idea of extensionist separation. Like, how does plugging into all these devices actually create distance?
Well, think about it. We rely on our phones to remember things, to navigate, even to think through problems sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So we're extending our cognitive abilities, but that can also create a separation from those abilities.
Interesting.
Like if we don't exercise our memory, our critical thinking skills, what happens to them?
Yeah.
There's a risk of becoming almost alienated from our own inherent capacities.
So again, these things that seem negative, like technology isolating us,
Right.
they're part of this larger process.
The dialectic, yes. Hegel believed that progress often emerges from these clashes, these contradictions.
Yeah.
So the tension between technology's potential to connect us and its potential to isolate us, it's not a dead end. It's a challenge that can push us to find better ways to use technology, to build meaningful connections, to be mindful of the downsides.
To find a balance.
Exactly. The key is to recognize those contradictions and then work towards a synthesis that incorporates the best of both sides.
Okay, so zooming out a bit, what were some of Hegel's specific worries about our modern world, as presented in this podcast?
Well, he points out some pretty major concerns. For example, the paradox of having so much information at our fingertips, but often lacking genuine understanding.
Right.
Like we can simulate the universe on a computer, but struggle to take care of our own planet.
Yeah.
We have AI that can mimic human conversation, but it often lacks basic empathy or common sense.
Like the human touch.
Exactly. He sees a potential imbalance where our technology, the spirit as he calls it, is advancing at an incredible pace, but our ethical development, our soul, is lagging behind.
And he also talked about how we often mistake speed for progress. Being connected online for genuine community and having tons of data for actual truth, like these are all super relevant to our everyday lives.
Absolutely. We tend to celebrate every new gadget as progress, but Hegel reminds us to ask, progress towards what?
Yeah.
Like, what does it actually mean for human well-being, for society?
Yeah.
Having thousands of online connections doesn't necessarily mean you have a strong, supportive community.
Right.
And all that data, it can actually make it harder to find what's really true, what's meaningful.
And he makes it clear that these aren't like inevitable outcomes. These worries, it's more like these are tensions that we need to be aware of and address.
Exactly. It's not a prophecy of doom. It's a call for conscious action. Like his image of this beautiful, perfectly functioning machine inhabited by ghosts who've forgotten they were once alive.
Wow.
It's a powerful metaphor for what can happen if we neglect our inner lives, our critical thinking in this technology-driven world.
And then the conversation shifts to something very current, being canceled. It's fascinating to hear a philosopher from centuries ago weigh in on that, even if it's fictionalized.
I know. It shows how some social dynamics, like the quick condemnation of people or ideas, they're kind of timeless, even if the methods have changed.
It's a human thing. It's always been there.
Exactly. And the way he imagines himself being ratioed, memed, or deplatformed for his philosophical views, it's funny.
Yeah.
But it also highlights how fragile reputations can be in the digital age.
Like one wrong move
And you're done.
Yeah.
And he describes himself as an obsolete processor in a world that values speed and bandwidth over deep thought. which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But he also talks about finding a place in the slow corners,
Okay.
which I think resonates with the idea that there will always be people who seek more than just quick hits of information, who want to engage with ideas in a more thoughtful way.
And even being canceled, which seems like a purely negative thing,
Right.
Hegel sees it through this dialectical lens. He does. Even the suppression of an idea, it's part of the evolution of thought.
Mm.
Like, ideas that are silenced in one era can reemerge later, often in a more powerful form.
So it's not necessarily the end.
No, it can even be a catalyst for something new.
And then we get to Hegel's risky thought, which
Yeah.
feels like the core of his concerns about our time.
Right. What struck you most about that?
Well, it's the idea that our digital age, with all its progress, might actually be a sign of spiritual exhaustion. Like we're outsourcing our memory, our thinking, even our identities to algorithms.
Right.
We're reducing people to data points. It's a bit bleak.
It raises some serious questions about what it means to be human in this digital world.
Yeah, and his critique of influencers and this obsession with clicks over truth, that's pretty sharp.
It is. He points at the irony of a culture obsessed with authenticity,
Right.
when everything is curated for online consumption.
And the way we chase engagement, it can distract us from seeking genuine understanding. Yeah, and the constant influx of content, it can drown out that inner voice, the one that helps us make sense of the world, you know?
And his description of modern freedom, this constant connectivity, endless choices, of potentially lacking depth, even fearing silence, is pretty provocative critique.
It is. It makes you wonder, are we truly free if we can't handle silence? If we're always seeking external validation? Or are we just slaves to our devices, to the
The
algorithm?
next notification.
Exactly. His question, what is this freedom you keep speaking of, and are you sure it's still yours? That's something we all need to ask ourselves.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Hegel's fictional encounter with our world, what are the key takeaways you think our listeners should walk away with?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is the power of the dialectic. This idea that progress emerges from the clash of opposites, the tensions and contradictions in our relationship with technology. They present us with opportunities and risks. Hegel, even in this fictional form, reminds us to be critical, to be aware of the potential consequences of our choices, both individually and as a society.
And to think deeply about what progress and freedom really mean in this 21st century.
Exactly.
And that final thought you want to leave with our listener, building on Hegel's question about freedom.
In this world of constant connection, information overload, how do you cultivate your inner life, your own values, your own sense of self? How do you make sure your freedom is truly yours and not just something dictated by algorithms or the latest trends?
That's a powerful question to ponder.
It is.
And if this has sparked your curiosity, I highly recommend checking out Hegel's actual work or just taking some time for reflection. Think about your own relationship with technology, with the information you consume every day.
It's worth the effort.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
And we'll be back soon with another exploration into the ideas that shape our world.
Looking forward to it.